Okay, thanks very much. And thank you to the people who are attending today. Um, this will be an example of a project that several educators are working on in Baltimore. And this has a background, a context of supporting mathematics. And so we're going to get ready. We're three educators. Joe Mills began this project some years ago and ran it very successfully. And it was interrupted uh, by the business collapse and then by COVID. And then I joined him. I'm David Robson, the second person here, joined him um, uh, to wrap it in a software package which could withstand those kinds of interruptions. Asa Snipes is a math teacher who is currently working with the business that she started in mathematics. So maybe you can talk with her later. All of us were classroom teachers. As many of you know, math has a problem that sets it apart from many other subjects. It's highly cumulative. So if you're going to learn something new next month, there's a good chance it's built on top of what you're learning this week. And that stacking just continues for year after year. So this means that you can't forget this week's skill. And so that means students need long-term retention. But it's well understood that if you're a normal young person and you are taking math in a normal classroom, you're going to be forgetting it. So here's an example of forgetting. This is a lovely research project done published in 2021, and it was a algebra course. And they were able to measure the amount of forgetting on a week by week basis. And the results, I find a very persuasive strategy for the study. The results were that each week the students forgot around 3% of what they knew at the beginning of the week. And when I first read this, I thought, well, that's not a big deal because 3% is a small number. But of course, it's a weekly number. And in a K-12 environment, there'll be about 30 weeks of school, maybe more. So 3 times 30 really suggests a lot of forgetting. And that's consistent with what many teachers report. Fortunately, the research psychologists have discovered various techniques that can stop or at least reduce forgetting. And many of these principles have been gathered under the heading science of learning. So the three of us decided to use these tools to see if we can make some progress against these trends. And our requirements were the following. For the teacher, we can't offer something that will make them do more work. And in fact, the goal here is to reduce the teacher's workload because it's well beyond a full-time job for a typical teacher. The other is it's got to increase the student's mastery of mathematics. So those are the two. And the vow was if we can't do them both, we'll just stop it and enjoy the extra time or something. This resulted in our plan, which following this plan, we have a daily warm-up quiz. Consists of 5 questions, typically 10 minutes. It's scored right away, automatically, but we don't put A's or B's on it. So in a sense, it's not graded. Typically, after the quiz, there is a session of peer tutoring. So the students are going to work with each other in small groups. All of this is resting on the principles behind science of learning. And here are the ones that we set out first. They are retrieval practice, spaced repetition, and interleaving. These are extensively studied and have decent benefit statistics. For instance, retrieval practice, the period of learning it the retention period. If somebody would normally learn something and then remember it for a week, well, if you do retrieval practice, you can expand that to 2.4 weeks. That's what that number means. Spaced repetition can double the number of weeks. Interleaving can typically double the number of weeks. So one of the interesting questions, which we don't have the answer for, is what if you do all three? uh, could you multiply the 2.0 times the 2.0 times the 2.4 and get results like that? Well, I wish I knew the answer to that, but we are using all three of these principles. For example, this will be the third one, the interleaving. This is a typical math quiz for grade 3, and don't worry, you don't need to read the fine print here. But the topics on the right are: the first question deals with perimeter of a rectangle, the second one of area, the third one is just a computation of using division, the fourth one is a word problem involving distance, and the fifth one is a word problem involving area. So these are thoroughly interleaved topics, and it avoids that problem of having a practice sheet where you do an area problem, a different area problem, another area problem, and those are highly ineffective. So then the question is, looking at that very same quiz, each question we have linked to a Maryland State mathematics standard, and in these five represented as five colors, but in this collection of five questions, we have four different standards, but we can track how individual students are doing with regard to individual standards because each question is linked to a standard. So what about the other two? What about retrieval practice and spaced repetition? So we turn to a calendar. And so this is a month of April, and we're going to plot a pre-plan quiz questions related to the standard 3 NBTA 1, which has to do with place value. So the green box represents a question on that standard. So repetition is what a retrieval practice is all about. So if you just count the greens, we have 6 questions in that month, all dealing with that standard. But they don't come in all 6 in one day. They don't come in 6 questions in 6 days. Instead, the first one begins on the 3rd, then we skip the 4th, then we question on the 5th. We don't question on the 6th or 7th, but well, those are weekend days. So you might ask, well, why are we tracking? We don't teach math on weekends. So, but the students certainly forget on weekends, so they count in the spaced repetition plot. So if we just look at the white boxes between them, we have 1 day spacing, 2 day spacing, 3 day spacing, 5 day spacing, and so it goes. So this is a method for pre-planning spaced repetition in combination with retrieval practice. So this takes care of retrieval practice, we believe, and also takes care of spaced repetition. Okay, there's some other science of learning standards, which we've folded in also, but not going to discuss those in great detail. But we're now up to 6 different strategy factors. And so this meant that it really is going to require some custom software. We first worked with existing software, somebody else's software, and then later transitioned to building our own software. So here's the software, kind of a jump here. This is what the teacher sees when they start using it, maybe at the beginning of the day. This each row represents a quiz, and the first 3 rows mean that 3 quizzes have been administered. The last 3 show that those have not been taken. Teacher can click on the preview button and see the quiz ahead of time or after time. Um, and when the teacher clicks on start, that unlocks this particular quiz for all the students on their Chromebooks. So this is sort of the teacher's um, control panel. The student screen would look something like this. This is a question of the 5 in their quiz. And this is grade 3 simple subtraction problem. And the student will work out the answer and then select the correct one. Um, Click save and next to go to the next problem. They can work backwards and check things. But when they're all finished with the 5 questions, then they'll click a button marked submit. When they click submit, the next thing they see is this. Oh, no, I told you wrong. This is a student taking a quiz because we saw such a variety of approaches. This guy likes to poke at the screen and rub it. This student likes to work everything out in traditional marker and paper. This young woman is using the old digital system by flipping her digits or natural digits, and this guy didn't want people to see how he was doing it because he valued his privacy. But now, when they all finish, this is their results screen, and this is kind of hard to see in this photograph, so I'm going to switch to a mock-up here. And so the results screen is in 2 parts. On the right, we have 3 columns. The student can see what answer. Let's look at question number 1. They selected answer D, and wow, it was correct. And for the second question, they selected C, and that was incorrect. So the scoring of these takes a fraction of a second. They see their results immediately. For many students now, there's some wait time for other students to finish the quiz. And we've encouraged these students to use this wait time to re-examine the ones they got wrong. So on the left side of the screen, they have a rectangle. They can scroll up to question number 1 or scroll down to question number 5. And so this guy can look at question, Jackson is his name. He can look at question number 2 and spend some time thinking about, well, why did I get that wrong? I was pretty sure, but it didn't work. So let me think about that again. So this is personal reanalysis using what otherwise would have been dead time. Okay. The teacher's progress screen can show her how students are doing while they're doing it. And so these are the first 3 questions, the questions in the central column, the answers and the correct answers in bold. There's a little link there called standards, and she can click on that and see which standard is being assessed by this question. But the most interesting part are the bar graphs over on the right, and that will show which options were the most popular to least popular. And for question number 1, the majority of the students selected B, and it turns out that's the correct answer. So teacher can look at this and think, when we do something following the quiz, I probably don't need to focus on question number 1. They're doing very well in that. So let's now jump down to questions 4 and 5. And question 4 um, has a wider distribution of answers. There are fewer correct answers, more. In fact, they're not evenly distributed, but they're kind of widespread. And I take this as a indication that a lot of the students are guessing at this question. And so if we elect to review after this quiz, this would be a good one for me to target. So this is what I'm discussing here is really formative assessment. So the traditional formative assessment has several different meanings depending on where you are, but the original one was the lesson is in progress. You pause, teacher asks the students a question, all of them answer the question, and the distribution of answers informs the teacher about whether that instruction was successful. It's not always easy to come up with those questions in the moment, but this approach accomplishes the same thing. After the 5-question quiz, the teacher can know which ones are represent skills that the students collectively are weak in. Okay. So what will the teacher do at the end of this? Oh, incidentally, teacher can watch this during the quiz and even see the bars slowly grow up every time somebody submits a quiz. So that's kind of entertaining. But then what would the teacher do next? There are two things. One, she might address the whole class, but selectively talk about a couple of problems, not all of them. Another would be to rely on peer tutoring. So here's the whole class solution. Um, uh, and the teacher is focusing on one or two problems. Students are offering ideas, and nobody necessarily needs to indicate what they got right or wrong, but they can talk through the mental process for the selected problems. Another option is, in this case, the teacher has already configured the desks in groups of 4. So it's a peer tutoring group of 4, and so they work through things. The advice that we've given is the following. If you're in a peer tutoring group and you got the problem correct, then you have a special responsibility. And first of all is don't blurt out the answer. But what you want to do is encourage other students to think about it for a while and see if they can arrive at the correct answer. And that's done really by asking them questions. It could be, Larry, could you read question 3 and then tell us what you were thinking as you worked through it? What was going through your mind as a reasonable way to approach it? So then that he can trade that idea with other student ideas. So this is the way we approached peer tutoring. It took a little while, I would guess maybe a couple of weeks for the students to get the hang of this. And then they seem to relate to it pretty nicely. Jumping topics here a little bit. This software, it permits retaking a quiz. The whole point is to milk the quiz for learning. It's not really a formal assessment. So if a student wishes, now that's the student agency part, they can retake it. They can't retake it today. They'll have to wait until tomorrow when that quiz is unlocked automatically on the calendar. And they can take it as many times as they wish. And there's a nice reporting system for that. Here are one student, this is Sam, and 3 quizzes. And the yellow circle represents their first take, which was with the whole class. And then the blue circles represent subsequent repeats of that quiz. And we've got these horizontal lines, but there are no numbers on the lines. There's no vertical axis marked up. So we are not so fascinated with what was their score as is what is their trend. How nice a trend can a student put together? So that's a trivial matter. If a student is absent, they can maybe come in a couple minutes early and do yesterday's quiz. No action by the teacher necessary. They could even log in at home and take the quiz. So our original requirements for this experiment were, can we make the teacher's workload go down? And can we make the students' understanding of math go up. And so here's the way we think of this now. If you're a teacher and you like to do warm-up quizzes, very likely you'll have to create the questions, or you'll have to get maybe an AI tool to create the questions, but you'll have to duplicate them for the student, have to administer, and you might have to score the questions and record them in your spreadsheet or something. But with this system, here is what the teacher must do. So this is quite a time savings. Our first pilot teacher uh, said that it saved her 15 minutes a day. I think it might have been a bit more than that, but even 15 minutes works out to more than a work week, a typical work week. So there's real time savings here. What about the other question? And that is there improvement of learning? So we surveyed the students this year's the pilot number 2, and 13 out of 14 said that they experience more learning or a lot more. And we were a little concerned about the peer tutoring because it takes a while to get the hang of it. And we had some very nice written responses on what their experience of peer tutoring. And I especially like the last one. Um, Makes me feel happy. That's like that quite a bit. Teacher feedback. Nicole was asked, do you think students learn more or less math? She said, my students mastered more with each quiz. Would you like to use it next year? I'd love to use it next year. And did she think peer tutoring was a good idea? And actually, she focused on answering a different question, but she says their favorite part was the immediate feedback. They loved seeing how many checks they could get. So, a spirit of personal quest and personal improvement. And uh, I felt like we saw some shifts in mindset. So that was pretty nice. The previous pilot, which was interrupted by COVID, the blue is business of usual from the 2 preceding years on the state exam. Then we supported the class with 2 months of this computerized math, and the the business of usual showed 11% of the students had uh, adequate mathematics. I've forgotten the buzzword for that. And when we worked with them for 2 months, that changed to 31%. So that's a nice increase. It's close to 3 times as many students showing progress. So, going to change to references that we've found very helpful. Make it stick. It summarizes 23 different principles. And incidentally, if you download the slides for this, you may find our 2-page summary of the 23 principles. So if you want a quick study on that, this book was written by Pooja Agarwal, who was one of the graduates and PhD student of one of the authors of the first book. And she teamed up with Patrice Bain, a K-12 teacher, and they worked together to use these principles in Bain's class. Good results. Look at all those stars on the book. So that's a nice one. And then later, a organization was put together largely by Pooja, and this is she's now teaching at a college in Boston. But this organization called retrievalpractice.org publishes booklets about each principle, and they're very good. They're written by some of the top researchers and edited by other experts and so on. So these are dandy resources. I recommend them all. And then here's the book that I'm told, helped launch this particular uh, the event today, Schools That Succeed by Corinne Chenoweth. Um, and one of the I read this years ago, pulled it off the shelf and found a couple of underlined quotes, and one was from an expert saying the aha experience comes from a large number of what I can't read it because the Zoom has it covered up, but I'm sure you'll find it inspiring, right? So I'm going to skip this. And so I'm hoping that we have uh, time for some questions. So I think Elena is going to hop in and manage some questions for us. Hope you'll get in touch with us. Uh, and we're looking for additional pilot teachers right now at grades 3 and 4 for the upcoming school year. Um, we're really looking forward to repeating the particular pilot school that we did this spring because we didn't do it. So next year we should be able to get an entire school year and see whether it has an impact on the state assessment at the end of the year. So we're kind of looking forward to that. So, uh, questions, Elena? Can you?
Yeah, thank you, David. This was wonderful. If anybody has any questions and you want to drop them in the chat, I haven't seen any so far, or you can unmute now and ask a question. Feel free. We have some time.
Um,
Can you hear?
I,
Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, please.
No, I'm listening. I'm thinking about my question now.
So I was wondering if you did any modeling with the peer tutoring stuff.
We did, though, in retrospect, I think we didn't do enough. And in the room, there were two adults, me, kind of the outsider, and the regular teacher, and we should have recruited a couple students and done some after school practice so the students would know what we're trying to model. So uh, we really missed that opportunity, and that I'm pretty sure uh, uh, cost us some time in terms of student buy-in to the peer tutoring. So
I would
yeah,
also think it's very powerful, but it's not intuitive.
I agree with both powerful and not intuitive. But uh, we were pretty surprised at how third graders uh, were willing to try new things. And once they knew that this was not really counting toward their quarterly grade, uh, but it really was practice. But it was practice that got scored. And so that turned it into a challenge. Um, so uh, that happened without us having to model it or do a lot of hand wringing or they were kind of ready with that, like, hey, this is not going to count. It's going to be practice, but how good do you think you can do today? And
So
so
did you track? I mean, did they sort of form teams? Let's see if our team score could go up.
no, but I think it's a great idea. I don't have experience in grade 3, so I'm going to transmit that back to the teacher and see if that feels right. Uh, it sounds like something we could do. Have you experienced that in your teaching?
Yeah.
And it's helpful, you're saying?
Yeah, I think that then there's an investment in everybody doing better.
Yeah. How many teams would you have?
Well, if you have groups of 4 or 5,
Oh, that could be your, oh,
you're
so the tutoring group
right,
could
becomes
be
your
the
team.
competition group
Yeah.
too. Of course. That seems like a great idea to me. So, uh, so I can promise you we'll pass that on. Now, it raises the question, though. One of the things we're listing, we got a pretty healthy list of changes we'd like to make to the software. And uh, having this software keep track of the competitive groups might, I think that might be very helpful, right? So that you wouldn't have to burn up time calculating
Right.
sums and
Right.
areas.
And so I'm thinking that it's not groups competing against one another, but how much they could raise their scores. So if they were tracking how good their team was at facilitating questions and further understandings, it would be really cool.
So teams could compete on how much they improved.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So in fact, one educator suggested to me, and we've got this on the list. You saw that student result screen where they finish the quiz and they see their
Right.
personal results. Thinking at the bottom of that screen gets frozen in place until the teacher releases it. So the peer tutoring can happen while they're staring at that screen.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking maybe we have at the bottom a little drop down thing. It says, who helped you the most understanding part of this
Or
quiz?
maybe what helped you the most?
Well, yeah, but the what is a lot harder for us to track. Whereas I could see I could see some special big gold star for the kid who was the most helpful.
Well,
This
maybe. I mean, I would, as a researcher, then I would want to know what was helpful. But if you identified some gold star helpers, then you could really talk to them about what they did.
There you go, spoken like a researcher. Yeah. So um, so if any of you have thoughts along those lines, please get in touch by email. Yeah. Yeah,
I just wanted to agree with her, and I think that it would encourage the classmates with the peer tutoring, just encourage them to help support more, especially if it's within their group.
yeah, as they get to know each other, they can have more emotional stake in the group doing well. Yeah, I think I I love it. So uh, yeah.
There is a question in the chat. It says that they would love to try this in a one-to-one setting. So is there any chance of accessing the beta model?
Send me an email and we'll see if we can make that work. I'm not clear what you mean one-to-one. That would be what, one student at a time or one class?
I'm thinking like the teacher and one student, like almost like an intervention.
Ah, wow. Um, our major principal was the number one there and reduced the teacher's workload. So uh, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to learn more about that. So if you ask that question, uh, please grab the email and don't let the question fall on my floor. There was one incident that stuck in my mind, and I sort of jumped over the slide because I wanted to leave enough time for questions. But there was a student who was wearing a hoodie jacket, and he had the hood covering his whole face. He was in the class for a couple of days before I knew he was there. He was living. He the math period as when I attended, and he was in the closet for 2 or 3 days with this hoodie pulled down. I didn't realize he was even in the room. But later he came and sat at a desk. And one day he sort of jumped up and seemed kind of nervous and ran out of the classroom, dashed down the hall. And I walked after him, wondering what's going. And the teacher said, "No, come on back. Don't worry about it." And the girl next to him said, "Well, he was I think he was excited because he got them all right, but he didn't know how to express it. And it was really just one of those things that uh, makes me realize how little, as a teacher, I understand young people, even though I did a whole career of it. But,
David, I was wondering if a teacher wants to participate, how much leeway time do they need to give you to like get everything set up and come into their
well, the uh, so what does it take to, well, first of all, presently we're equipped to do grade 3. In September, we'll be equipped to do grades 3 and grade 4. The problem is we have to preload these questions into the software. And there are a lot of questions. So it's 180 school days, okay? How about this little math drill? And if you can do 5 questions a day, how many questions do you need? And the answer is you need 900 questions. And the questions have to be matched against the standards. And the answers should reflect the incorrect answers are the real sticky point. You want the incorrect answers to not just be wrong, but to be the student's favorite kind of error. Uh, and uh, uh, we hope in the future to be able to milk which errors students preferred, but we're certainly not tracking that now. So how so anyhow, 3 and 4, sure, we can have about a 60-minute Zoom session with a 3rd or 4th grade teacher, and I think they would be ready to go.
Thanks. We have about 4 minutes left. If anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, I'm I see that you've keyed this to the Maryland standards, which makes perfect sense. But as I look at the math that my grandson is learning, they've moved into a whole thing like he says, I'm learning the distributive principle, and they're trying to make it very narrative. And how would that sort of map onto what you're doing?
Well, it would have to be reflected in some of the questions. Um, this is not from an educator's point of view. This is not a perfect system. Well, first of all, something I forgot to mention. This does not teach math. This is an attempt to get science of learning enlisted in keeping the students from forgetting the math that you teach them. So that means there's going to be some misfit. Now, we try to introduce the questions in the sequence in which the standards do it, but it's likely that we're going to be shifting to Common Core. Not a perfect set, but uh, Maryland has changed some of their standards. And as you go up in the years, there's more changes. And Joe, in particular, he's a real expert in this, is not convinced that these are wonderful changes. So, so it's likely that as we add years, we'll be following Common Core. So this is imperfect for classroom teacher, especially if you teach things in some unique sequence. However, once the students gain a certain degree of flexibility in rolling with the punches, you can say, look, question 3, teach, you haven't taught us that. You say, yeah, that's right. We haven't reached that yet, but give it a try, even if you have to guess. What the heck? Maybe, maybe you'll have a good idea while you're trying. So it's possible to kind of turn the temperature down and find that unexpected questions or imperfectly synchronized questions can still be interesting opportunities. So that's a little bit defensive, maybe, but
No, it's really good formative assessment.
Right, right. Well, the statistics, the software records a ton of statistics, like 600 data points a week for one class. And if we really wanted to milk these, eh, uh, a researcher could have a lot of fun with this, I believe. Um, so we are not digging into that very much yet. We do have reports available to the teacher. So I didn't show it because it takes a couple minutes to talk through. Uh, but the teacher has a report. But our two pilot sessions, we had reports on offer, and both teachers never looked at them. It was all this, how can we get up our quiz scores, and how can we help each other? That was where their focus was. And so that was an interesting surprise.